pressure every game like you've got it, or be able to relax a little bit?
I'd rather have it the way St. Louis has it right now, because if you lose one game, it may take you a month to make it up, particularly when you have two teams like Boston and Philadelphia fighting it out for that top division.
He was pathetic. That's what John Havlicek must have felt like every time he stepped onto the court against certain opponents. The man they called Hondo, the Iron Man of basketball, the guy who supposedly never got tired, had a secret list. A list of players who made him want to quit. Players who broke him down mentally, physically, and emotionally. For all his calm and polite interviews, Havlicek privately couldn't stand facing 5 specific NBA legends. These weren't just tough matchups, these were personal nightmares that exposed every weakness in his game. Today, we're breaking down the 5 players who made John Havlicek's career absolute misery. The ones who turned his legendary endurance into a curse. And by the way, if you're loving how wild these rivalries sound already, hit that hype button. It lets us know you want more untold NBA stories like this. John Havlicek was supposed to be unstoppable, the engine of the Boston Celtics dynasty that bridged 2 decades of championships. Medical reports suggested his resting heart rate was so low, and his lung capacity so vast that fatigue was basically a myth for him. He didn't just play basketball, he outlasted it. Ran opponents into the ground with relentless figure eights and baseline cuts. Wore them down until they made mistakes in the fourth quarter. That was his edge. That was his genius. But what happens when that edge disappears? What happens when you meet someone just as relentless? What happens when your greatest strength becomes your greatest weakness? That's what these 5 players did to Havlicek. They didn't just beat him on the scoreboard, they beat him in his mind. They made him hate the game he loved. Jerry West was John Havlicek's personal nightmare. Not because West was just good, because West was perfect. And perfection, when you're facing it for 48 straight minutes, is absolutely exhausting. Havlicek built his entire reputation on the fact that he never took plays off. He ran full speed all game while everyone else conserved energy. But West? West never took a play off either. Havlicek's whole strategy was based on running until the other guy got tired. West never got tired. West matched him stride for stride, cut for cut, sprint for sprint. Havlicek said West forced him to be perfect defensively for all 48 minutes. Not 40 minutes, not 45 minutes. Every single second of the game. One mistake, one moment of relaxing behind a screen, and West would punish him. The 1969 NBA Finals was where this torture reached its peak. The Lakers had assembled a super team with West, Elgin Baylor, and Wilt Chamberlain. Everyone expected them to roll. Jerry West averaged 37.9 points per game in that series, nearly 38 points a game while Havlicek was supposedly guarding him. West was so dominant that even though the Lakers lost in 7 games, he won the Finals MVP. He's still the only player in major sports history to win Finals MVP on the losing team. That's not just a stat. That's humiliation for Havlicek. He played championship-level defense according to everyone watching. He did everything the Celtics system asked of him, and he still got absolutely dismantled night after night by West. Against most players, Havlicek could see the fatigue creeping in during the fourth quarter, not West. West had perfect defensive technique, an economical running style that never wasted energy, a pull-up jump shot so quick and so high that Havlicek couldn't contest it. Havlicek's primary weapon was movement without the ball. But West neutralized it completely. West chased him step for step. In the 1963 finals, there's footage of West hunting down Havlicek in transition with recovery speed that seemed impossible. That play haunted Havlicek for years. The word Havlicek used to describe West was unbearable. Playing against Jerry West meant 2 hours of suffocating anxiety. It meant knowing that if you relaxed for even one possession, you'd pay for it. West didn't have holes in his game. He was the mirror that never cracked. And that broke something in Havlicek's confidence every time they matched up. If Jerry West broke Havlicek mentally, Rick Barry broke him emotionally. Barry was everything Havlicek hated about basketball, wrapped into one infuriating package. Flashy, selfish, loud, constantly complaining, the complete opposite of the Celtics way. Havlicek was the ultimate team player. He accepted coming off the bench for years, even though he was an all-star talent. He played through pain. He was quiet and even-tempered. Rick Barry represented the exact opposite philosophy. Barry was a neon flashing light of emotion. He whined constantly, argued with referees on every call, lectured his own teammates during games. For Havlicek, whose game relied on a trance-like state of continuous motion, Barry's constant stoppages were torture. Run, cut, shoot, defend, repeat. That was Havlicek's rhythm. Barry destroyed that rhythm every single game. The media called Barry a whiner and a crybaby. His peers called him arrogant. Some called him an asshole. When Havlicek complained, it was rare and discreet. When Barry complained, it was theatrical. A performance. He'd throw his hands up, scream at refs, storm around the court like a child. For Havlicek, who called fouls on himself in practice to ensure fairness, Barry's behavior was an affront to the integrity of the sport. But here's what made it worse. Barry wasn't just annoying, he was incredibly effective. He led the league in scoring. He was a passing genius who pioneered the point forward role years before it became popular. In 1975, he led the Warriors to a shocking championship sweep and won Finals MVP. His ego-driven, ball-dominant style actually produced results. That must have driven Havlicek insane. To watch someone play basketball the wrong way and still succeed. To defend a 30-point-per-game scorer while listening to a running commentary of grievances. To see Barry visibly sulk when a play didn't go his way while Havlicek was running figure eights to get teammates open. Barry forced Havlicek to engage in a type of basketball he detested, a game of ego, and Havlicek couldn't stand it. Dave DeBusschere didn't torture Havlicek's mind or his patience. He tortured his body. DeBusschere was the physical embodiment of everything painful about 1970s basketball. A 235-pound power forward with the lateral quickness to guard small forwards, the man they called the Hatchet Man. That nickname came from Havlicek's college days. In the 1961 NCAA championship, a Cincinnati defender named Bob Wiesenhahn was labeled a Hatchet Man. He physically bullied Havlicek out of the game, holding him to just 4 points. Years later, DeBusschere inherited that role. He played minor league baseball with Wiesenhahn and brought the same bruising mentality to the NBA. When DeBusschere joined the Knicks in 1968, he transformed them into a defensive juggernaut. His primary weapon was his body. Hard screens, elbows in the lane, hip checks on cuts. DeBusschere made Havlicek pay for every inch of space. The 1973 Eastern Conference Finals was where this physicality reached its breaking point. Running one of his trademark cuts through the lane, Havlicek crashed full speed into a DeBusschere screen. The collision was catastrophic. His right shoulder suffered a severe injury. His trapezius muscle tore. Some witnesses called the screen illegal. Havlicek missed Game 4 but came back for the rest of the series playing essentially with one arm. He dribbled left-handed, passed left-handed, shot left-handed. But the Celtics lost the series in 7 games. That injury was the deciding factor, and DeBusschere was the reason. Every cut through the lane was a risk. Every screen could be the one that broke something. After games against the Knicks, Havlicek would be covered in bruises. Playing DeBusschere wasn't a track meet. It wasn't a technical duel. It was a tedious hatchet job. Wrestling on a basketball court. For a player who relied on flow and rhythm, DeBusschere was the ultimate disruptor. Havlicek's greatest strength was his constant movement. DeBusschere turned that strength into a liability, made Havlicek afraid of his own playing style. And that kind of physical dread was something Havlicek couldn't stand. Hal Greer did something to John Havlicek that almost nobody else could do. He matched him, stride for stride, sprint for sprint, for 48 exhausting minutes. And for Havlicek, whose entire game was built on outlasting opponents, that was unbearable. Greer was cited as the fastest guard in the NBA. He could beat Wilt Chamberlain in half-court sprints. But speed alone wasn't what made him special, it was his aerobic capacity, his refusal to fade in the fourth quarter. Against most opponents, Havlicek could count on fatigue kicking in. Greer never faded. His signature jump shot stayed consistent late into games. He remained bouncy when everyone else was dragging. And that neutralized Havlicek's primary advantage completely. Their matchups weren't basketball games. They were track meets. pure, unadulterated exertion, no rhythm, no structure, just lungs burning. The 1965 Eastern Conference Finals perfectly captured this dynamic. The series went 7 games because Greer matched the Celtics' pace step for step. In the final seconds of Game 7, Celtics leading 110 to 109, Havlicek tipped away an inbound pass. Havlicek stole the ball. The radio call became iconic. But here's the irony. His most famous moment in basketball came against the player who exhausted him more than anyone else. The steal that made him a legend happened in a series where Greer ran him into the ground for 7 straight games. Greer is still the 76ers' all-time leading scorer. In the 1966-67 season, when Philadelphia finally broke the Celtics' championship streak, Greer averaged 27.7 points in the playoffs. To beat Greer, Havlicek had to redline his own cardiovascular system for 48 minutes. And even then, it might not be enough. Playing Greer meant waking up the next day with legs that felt like concrete. It meant working twice as hard for every point. And for someone who built his identity on never getting tired, having to acknowledge exhaustion was the ultimate insult. Walt Frazier was different from the others. He didn't exhaust Havlicek physically like Greer, didn't break him mentally like West, didn't bruise him like DeBusschere, didn't annoy him like Barry. Frazier did something worse. He made Havlicek look slow, made his hard work look obsolete. Havlicek was a loud worker. His effort was visible, the constant running, the sweat, the aggressive pressing. Everything about his game screamed effort. Frazier was the epitome of cool. Nicknamed Clyde for his stylish dress, mink coats and wide-brimmed hats, a media darling in New York who drove a Rolls-Royce. On the court, he played with a calmness that bordered on arrogance. He didn't sprint frantically, didn't body up and wrestle. He just played possum, stood upright, appeared relaxed, then struck with blinding speed. Havlicek described Frazier's defense as quiet. For a player who equated sweat with success, Frazier's effortlessness was insulting. He could pick Havlicek's pocket without appearing to break a sweat, would lull opponents into a false sense of security, then strip the ball. It felt like a magic trick. Frazier memorized patterns. Havlicek relied on cuts, catches, dribbles. Frazier studied those patterns and intercepted them, not through effort, through intelligence. In the 1973 postseason, when the Knicks defeated the Celtics, Frazier's defense slowed down Boston's transition game. You couldn't feel Frazier like you could feel DeBusschere. Couldn't hear him like you could hear Barry. He was just there. And then the ball was gone. This was also a clash of eras. Havlicek was the country boy from Ohio State. Humble, hardworking. Frazier was the 1970s personified, flashy, celebrity, style over substance. To be guarded by Frazier was to be guarded by someone who made it look easy. And that was the ultimate insult to Havlicek's work ethic. He couldn't wear Frazier down because Frazier never looked tired. Couldn't outmuscle him because Frazier didn't engage. He just waited and stole. So there you have it. 5 players who made John Havlicek's career miserable. Jerry West demanded mental perfection for 48 minutes. Rick Barry disrupted the rhythm with constant emotional chaos. Dave DeBusschere turned basketball into a painful physical war. Hal Greer matched Havlicek's stamina and turned games into exhausting sprints. Walt Frazier made hard work look obsolete with effortless theft. Each one attacked a different part of what made Havlicek great. His focus, his discipline, his body, his endurance, his pride. Together they form a complete map of his weaknesses. A reverse tribute that reveals more about his greatness than any highlight reel ever could. But here's the thing we can't ignore. Havlicek retired as the NBA's all-time leading scorer at the time. He won 8 championships spanning 2 different eras, made 13 All-Star teams, played through injuries that would have ended other careers. He survived all 5 of these opponents, beat most of them more often than they beat him, and became a legend in the process. His grudges weren't just bitterness. They were proof of how impossibly high his standards were. Most players would have been satisfied just competing with Jerry West or Hal Greer. Havlicek was angry that he couldn't completely dominate them. Most players would have shrugged off Rick Barry's complaining. Havlicek saw it as an insult to the game itself. That's the real story here. Not that these 5 players broke Havlicek down. but that they couldn't break him completely. They pushed him to his limits mentally, physically, and emotionally, and he kept coming back, kept fighting, kept running. In the end, the players John Havlicek couldn't stand became the measuring stick of his greatness. They proved that even the Iron Man could be hurt, could be frustrated, could be exhausted, but they also proved that being hurt, frustrated, and exhausted doesn't mean you lose. He might have hated them, but they made him immortal.